So first of all, I just want to point out that Jimmy Dore is so mad about how this interview went that he named the segment Cornel West does 45-minute commercial for Joe Biden. Like, he's so mad. He's so mad, dude. He's so mad that that Cornel West didn't like bow and kiss the ring. That Cornel West didn't get down and like lick his boots. He's so mad. Jimmy Dore, I would also say there's probably an element of Jimmy Dore being very upset that Cornel West initially announced his run as a member of the People's Party, which is basically a vanity project for Jimmy Dore. And yeah, no, we haven't done the Elon segment yet. Don't worry. We have so many segments to get through. Jimmy is a narcissist. Jimmy is a grifter, a grifting asshole. That's what he is, and I feel like it's pretty evident. But you know what? The one thing I like about this interview, and keep in mind as we go through it, I've only seen like a clip from it, but keep in mind that this might be one of the few things that can actually shake any of Jimmy Dore's audience off of him. You know? Like, he's got people who are, like, full-on injecting the brain rot on a daily basis, right? But those same people, by and large, consider Cornel West to be, like, oh, well, he's a true leftist, right? So the fact that Jimmy Dore is out here basically saying Cornel West is carrying water for Joe Biden, I think is something that offers us the potential to maybe, I don't know, maybe we can get some of these people. Maybe a few people are going to be wondering, hey, that Jimmy Dore guy, he's not being very consistent, is he? Just a couple weeks ago, former Dore producer spilled the tea how Jimmy Dore is a horrible alcoholic and drug addict and yells at his staff every second the camera's off. Well, yeah, that's not surprising at all. Then literally none of that is surprising. But do you have any links to the producer, Gamer G? Anyway, I'll get this started.
Welcome back to the show, Dr. Cornel West.
Oh, thank you, my dear brother. I think about you. I think of George Carlin. You know, the Union Seminary is right across the street from George Carlin Place.
Oh, really? No
What a
kidding.
grand genius. He grew up on 121st and Broadway next to Corpus Christi Church, and they got a beautiful sign saluting him. And beside Richard Pryor, he's got to be one of the greatest comic geniuses of the last 50 years, my brother.
Well, I certainly wish he was still alive right now because I know he would see through all the propaganda that we've been living through, at least since 2015. But I want to just, before we start, I want to get this out there because some people misunderstood my coverage of your appearance with Anderson Cooper, and they took it as an attack on you when I was merely trying to help you get the message right about the Ukraine war. Because as a radical, part of your job is to educate people on what's actually happening, and you have to be crystal clear in explaining it to people, especially about what's happening in Ukraine. So people took that as me trying to attack you when I was doing it more as a coach, trying to help you and get it right. And that's what I'm going to be doing in this interview also, because I was thrilled to hear.
Yeah, because look at Cornel West's face. Cornel West doesn't need your fake-ass coaching, Jimmy. Jesus Christ. Like, I don't think Cornel West as a candidate is necessarily doing a lot of good, but, like, I do think Cornel West, at the very least, is earnest, you know? And he's not stupid. He knows what he's talking about, right? But this being the first thing you say to Cornel West, having him on your show, that's wild to me.
That you're running third party. You got more courage than I do to do it. You're a better man than me. And so I appreciate you doing it because you're getting the message out there about the Ukraine war, about the two-party duopoly. This is really important. And so if I just want to tell people, so if it seems like I'm being critical of Cornel West from here going forward to the election, what it is going to be is me trying to help make his
Yeah, Jimmy Dore is trying to help by saying Cornel West does 45-minute commercial for Joe Biden. That he's helping, guys.
His message even better than it is,
This is
because I
actually
think it's really important
this is actually so much worse than I thought it was going to be. This is actually so much worse than I thought it was going to be, and we're only 2 minutes in.
that his message get out there. That's what this is about. So anyway, I just wanted to clear that up.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. I think the important thing always is, brother, that we the anthem of Black folk is lift every voice, not lift every echo. You got a voice, I've got a voice. Our voices overlap. Our voices can have tension. Our voices can conflict. We can learn from one another. We proceed. We've got a similar critique of the predatory capitalist society. We've got similar critique of a whole host of issues, and certain things we disagree with. Well, that's understandable too. I'm learning from you. You learning from me. But it's the respect more than anything else that's crucial here. And I think I appreciate you starting off with that kind of a reflection, my brother. Very much so.
So now people make a big deal out of the fact that you endorsed Joe Biden in 2020, and now you're running against him. And the reason what was the reason you endorsed him in 2020, and what has changed since?
Yeah, one, I was thoroughly convinced that we needed an anti-fascist coalition, and that included the kind of milquetoast warmongering neoliberals like Biden. And now it's fairly clear Biden had 4 years. Yet 4 years is still the thunder from any kind of Trump challenge. 4 years to try to speak to the needs of poor and working people. 4 years to try to cut back on the military adventurism. That's been characteristic of his whole career. And it's clear to me now that if the only opposition to the escalating neo-fascism in the country is going to be Biden, 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 or Biden-like, then the fascism's coming anyway. We're going to have alternatives.
Yep. Okay, I understand his argument, but it's strange to me that he doesn't seem to understand that, like, well, if the fascism is coming anyway, like, having it sooner rather than later isn't actually good.
Alternative vision, alternative institutions, alternative infrastructures that has an alternative passion. And so if all we can do is produce democratic administrations that are caretakers, postponers of the Trump or Trump-like candidates, then the fascism's coming anyway. The only way you really get at the roots of fascism is to break from the corporate duopoly, to show how the two-party system is an impact.
But if you break from the corporate duopoly, and that breaking is what brings apart democracy. Like, it doesn't matter that you broke the duopoly. You broke the duopoly for the fascists.
Impediment for the unleashing not only of American democracy, but also trying to dismantle the empire in terms of the 800 military units around the world, and the military budget taking 57 cents for every dollar. And so in that sense, there's been a shift. There's no doubt about that. Now, keep in mind, I supported Ralph Nader and Jill Stein. And in between, I had early supported Bill Bradley, and I had supported John Kerry as a kind of anti right-wing coalition, too. So that my jazz-like activities certainly can be characterized at times with a certain kind of inconsistency, but it's the timing of it. Each moment has its own context.
So now our friend Nick Cruz says that many climate activists have no idea how much they destroyed all their credibility by endorsing and supporting Joe Biden, the Nord Stream pipeline bomber, and the largest eco-terrorist in modern human history, for president. Why should anyone take climate or environmental issues seriously when you obviously do not? Now, what do you say back to that kind of critique, that by endorsing him, you lose your credibility?
Well, it becomes, I think, I've been on my dear brother's show a number of times, and I think there's always a certain force in the argument of trying to be consistently third party across the board, having no relation whatsoever to the bourgeois politicians. I think there's force to that. But I think the credibility that one has really is holistic. It's wholesale rather than just retail. And the credibility that you have in regard to being consistently against war, consistently against capital, consistently against white supremacy, even if it has different kind of stances from one election to the next. That would be one of the ways in which I would try to respond to that. That would be the beginning of a response to that.
Okay. Here's another tweet from Nick. He says the same professional managerial class gaslighters want us to take it easy on Bernie.
Man, I love that Jimmy Dore has so advocated his, like, whatever responsibility he has to his audience, that he's just reading off socialist MMA tweets. Oh my god! We watched one of his shows. We watched Revolutionary Blackout Network when they interviewed Marianne Williamson, and it was a complete shit show. It was like just these are not serious people to pay attention to or build your politics off of.
Bernie, they use civility politics as a weapon so they can comfortably sell out. The working class must reject this and start holding these people accountable for selling us out. So Bernie has sold us out, and I don't need you to call him a sellout or anything. That's fine. But I do want to see, this is your response, because Bernie was asked about your campaign, and he said it shouldn't happen, and he's against it, and he's endorsing
Right.
Biden, and of course that is just garbage. And so this is how you responded.
And you know, even in love, people have deep disagreements about these things. But I think again, he's fearful of the neo-fascism of Trump.
So when my what I would say to you here, and this is a big point, and I'm trying to impress upon you going forward, that when you
Sure.
do that, you sound a little bit like Joe Biden, and what you're doing is you're giving a pass to Bernie Sanders and anybody else for voting lesser of two evils. So you're endorsing the Democrats' message in their campaign. And so now people can dismiss your candidacy and say, well, we got to worry about the neo-fascism of Trump, as if Joe Biden isn't worse, which he is.
Yeah. The milquetoast neoliberal is worse than the guy who had dismantled democracy. Is Jimmy Dore aware that if, like, Trump dismantled democracy, like, he wouldn't be able to elect someone in the future? Like if there is no democracy, then it's literally like we fight or we die. Like that's what happens if democracy is dismantled, which is what Trump wants to do. So, like, that's the alternative here. Now, Jimmy is kind of correct in pointing out the fact that, like, if Cornel West believes that, then how could it be beneficial to bring that in sooner? But, like, to say that, he then goes a step further, is like, well, and Joe Biden is worse than the fascists who would rob us of any say in who runs our government.
He's a bigger
Nonsense.
fascist, and he just crushed a union strike on the railroad, which is the definition of fascism.
Which, by the way, Biden's administration continued to work behind the scenes to get more concessions for railroad workers. Now, they didn't get everything, but they did get time off, which is pretty important. And again, not all the workers got that, but at the end of the day, it's not the same as how a fascist would break a strike, because a fascist would just kill the workers who are striking. That's how that would work. Yeah. Fascism is when you when you meet some of the demands of workers who would otherwise go on strike. That's fascism. Fuck off, dude.
He's now trying to saber rattle with two nuclear powers, nuclear war, nothing more important than that. And what he's doing in Ukraine, you know exactly what he's doing, right? So he's the worst warmonger in the world. 300,000 Ukrainians have already been slaughtered in this proxy war that was provoked by NATO.
Yeah, and you know, the Ukrainians definitely wouldn't have been slaughtered if they had just allowed themselves to be taken over by Russia. You know, if the United States were to invade Mexico, Mexico should simply surrender. That's how that works, you know? It's really unfair for the rest of the world to ally themselves behind Mexico and to resist American imperialism. That's essentially the argument he's making. You know, if you just replace the United States or Russia with the United States in his analogy, like every single member of Jimmy Dore's audience would suddenly go, "Oh yeah, that would be bad." But because again, American imperialism and America is supporting Ukraine because, you know, it's bad when nuclear power invades a European country, and you know, of course, yeah.
NATO, which you know. So when do you think that when you say that about when you call Donald Trump a neo-fascist and you don't say that about Joe Biden, what do you say when I tell you that you're undercutting your own campaign and you are propping up the Democratic message, which is that they are the lesser of two evil and you have to vote for Joe Biden so we don't have fascism. By the way, we already have fascism. As we all know, fascism is the joining of corporate and government to screw the worker. And that's exactly what Joe Biden, the Democrats, and Pete Buttigieg did. And so they will keep doing it, and they're not stopping it. And they're also for censorship, which is the hallmark of fascism. So this idea that Donald Trump is more of a fascist than Joe Biden undermines your own campaign.
Cornel West is just sitting here, like, trying to fucking keep up with the nonsense Jimmy is shitting out right now.
There's no doubt about that. And so what I would encourage you to stop doing that. What do you say back?
No, we deeply disagree on that, though, brother. I don't think, and this is where I disagree with Nick too, that, and I appreciate your advice here, you know, cast in a respectful way, but we do, and I disagree with Brother Nick on this too, that I just got back from Mississippi, you know that, you know, with the Jenkins and Parkins, the two brothers brutalized by the police, there at the church, the Klan still running wild, not just with votes, but terrorizing black folk. The Goon Squad finally got caught by the two lawyers, Brother Malik and Brother Trent. Now, what does that mean? That means that when you talk about fascism, you're talking not just about the rule of big money, not just the rule of big military, not just the rule of corporate power, so that it's oligarchic in essence, but you're also talking about dictatorial rule, no elections, the elimination of dissident voices, and then the scapegoating of the most vulnerable, which could be immigrants, it could be workers, it could be black people, Jews, Arabs, and so forth. See, with under Biden, what you have is a fascist dimension domestically, especially against black folk and others. You and I, the very fact that we're having this dialogue without being eliminated overnight, a fascist regime could completely call into question with the use of arbitrary power. That's what happens in the mass incarceration regime vis-a-vis poor black people and others, right? So that is the fascist dimension. Similarly, so in terms of militarism abroad, so that there's fascist elements, my brother, there's fascist dimensions. But with Trump, when you have calling into question transfer of power and so forth, that is not the same thing. And so that doesn't undermine my...
Which, yeah, like, Cornel West is 100% right here. Like, I wish that he would take that into account in, like, his campaign calculations. And I feel like he's not, because he's kind of thrown up his hands and said, well, fascism is going to happen anyway, might as well happen under my watch, which seems to me like a major abdication of responsibility. But on correctly identifying what fascism is, he is correct. You know, like, I'm glad he can do that. We supported a coup in Ukraine. How did the United States support a coup in Ukraine? If you're going to talk about John McCain went over and said we support Ukraine, like, that isn't supporting a coup in Ukraine. When people say a country supported a coup, what they mean is, like, they supplied arms, they funneled obscene amounts of money in. And as far as I can tell, from the reality of Ukraine post the fall of the USSR, the country doing that by far the most was Russia. which was able, through its attempts to control and subvert Ukrainian government, to insert puppet dictators. And those puppets were given orders by the Kremlin to fire upon protesters with snipers. So you had snipers in Kyiv shooting protesters in the streets, peaceful protesters in the streets. That violence is what then kicked off the coup, where the puppet president of Ukraine fled to Russia because he was installed by Russia. So that's part of the issue here, right?
Campaign at all. The campaign's about truth.
100% undermines your campaign. 100%. You're shooting yourself right in the dick before you even start. So that's just bad. You're getting bad advice.
I can't believe he just said to Cornel West that you're shooting yourself in the dick. What the hell, dude? I mean, like, I think Cornel West is wrong about a great number of things, but, like, this seems... Jimmy Dore's condescension here is frankly staggering.
Advice. I don't know who's advising you, but they're giving you horrible advice.
January. I'm a free man. I'm a free man, brother.
So January.
But I want to hear your argument. I want to hear your argument as to how Biden is more fascist than Trump.
Trump
just lay it out right quick.
Well, I'll tell you right now. The reason why the deep state Russia-gated Trump was because he wouldn't bomb enough to calm them down.
Trump, people literally went to jail for lying about having Russian connections and being influenced by Russia. That's not Russia-gated. That's not a fabricated hoax. People went to prison for lying about it and would still be in prison for lying about it were it not for being pardoned by Donald Trump.
So he wouldn't do enough bombing. The reason they impeached him because he wouldn't ship arms to Nazis in Ukraine, and he was against that. So that's
are you?
Sam Olsen, if you want to be on the in the on-screen chat, you just have to go to riverboat.gg.
Defending Trump as somehow being a person who is. I don't understand. I don't understand your argument at this point, though, man. What are we talking about?
Okay, so there's.
I want to understand what the content of your argument is, because one can, in fact, critique the.
I love that Cornel West is asking Jimmy Dore, "What the fuck are you on about, man?" And Jimmy is now having to explain his insane line of thinking. The only way you arrive at Jimmy Dore's positions are if you have absolute insane reasoning, or you are a lying grifter who doesn't really care what the justifications for your positions are.
Bear on the system as a whole with the two corporate wings, but somehow, what do you say to trans and gays and lesbian brothers and sisters in terms of their rights?
So that's again. Joe Biden is responsible for the mass incarceration, not Donald Trump. Who is more responsible for black and brown people being locked up and America being the largest penal colony in the world? Is it Donald Trump or would it be Joe Biden? By the way, this conversation is a loser for your campaign. Sitting here trying to make the argument.
It could be a loser for you too, though.
Trying to make the argument.
You trying to make the case that somehow the Democrats are more fascist than the Republicans. The fascism cuts across the board.
But that's not how you say it, though. You say it's only Donald Trump. You don't say it cuts across the board. You call Joe Biden milquetoast, and you call Donald Trump a fascist. So you're not saying Joe Biden?
Yes, because two different political ideologies are different. Two things have different words, actually. If there's one thing over here and it has a certain set of properties, and there's another thing over here with a different set of properties, you usually use two different words to describe, one for each thing. That's how that works. Yeah, different things are different. Exactly, Winby. Different things are different.
It is a fascist, really?
I said there's fascist dimensions to the Biden project. You're absolutely right.
It's
But
like
the
you're
question is,
campaigning for Joe Biden almost when you're doing.
Yeah. Look, when you say two things are different, like Jimmy Dore's gonna start asking questions like if he can pat his head and rub his tummy at the same time. It's too difficult. Gonna have to check your work there. Hey, Marking, how you doing? Haven't seen you in chat in a hot minute. What, you're gonna have to check my work? Which work? My makeup work?
Doing this.
Oh,
That's what it sounds like.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
But that's what it's. I'm not saying you are doing that. I'm saying that's what it sounds like.
What it sounds like to you. That's what it sounds like
Okay.
to you. And you got a right to be wrong. You got a right to be right. It sounds like to you. But it doesn't sound like that to a whole host of others at all, though, brother. Not
Okay.
at all.
All right. Again, I'm
Not at
saying this out of love for you because I do have a deep love for you. I have deep.
Yeah. I'm sure. The tone of your voice is really conveying so much love, Jimmy. I'm sure.
Respect for you, and we agree on almost everything except the message of your campaign. Right? That's the only thing. I would hope it would become even more focal. Well, let me just put it this way.
But are you suggesting that the message should be that Biden is a greater fascist than Trump? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that you should talk about fascism or any of that stuff. I think you should.
No, but fascism is very real.
I think
you don't think fascism is real in the country?
We're living in it. We're living in fascism.
But I'm talking about escalating in terms of intensity.
It has since Biden became president. It certainly has escalated in intensity. They've censored everybody. They've crushed unions. They've started another war, and now they're saber rattling with two nuclear powers. I don't know how I don't know how worse it could get. And by the way, he still hasn't let people out of prison. He still hasn't given student loan. He's still denying us health care. He's an enemy of the worker and a tool of military-industrial complex in Wall Street. There's no bigger fascist in the country than Joe Biden. The reason why black around.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna revise my opinion of this conversation. What Jimmy Dore is trying to do here is position himself as the one true leftist who is even more leftist than Cornel West. That's what he's trying to do. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to be like, there is no other true leftist other than me and the people who agree with me down the line. If you disagree with me, I will burn you to your core, even if you're someone who aligns with me on most things like Cornel West. It is delusional, it is neurotic, it is completely self-obsessed, and it is his obsession with his own media success that is frankly what's driving him here. It's what he's always done. Exactly, alt-fact. He's just getting into higher and higher and more prominent positions to do this because, frankly, people get suckered in by some of his talking points. And then once they get sucked in, they get spiraled down into, I would consider Jimmy Dore to be one of the biggest entry points to kind of this, I don't know that I'd call him a Nazbol, but like, he's kind of the entry point to this segment of the left that is completely dedicated to being ineffectual. The dumb left. I think I've called them that before. Well, again, he's the gateway to ineffective policy and campaigning. It's the neutering and spaying of the online left that Jimmy Dore is overseeing here, by living in just a completely alternate reality.
People are locked up again isn't because of Trump, it's because of brother Biden. And Joe Biden is proud of that. He brags about that. He brags about the crime bill, and he will never apologize for it. So I'm just letting you know that I really want your campaign to pick up traction. This is the opposite way to do it. Who's ever advising you sounds like an infiltrator.
But why do you keep saying advise me? I'm thinking for myself, brother. I'm a free
I don't mean to insult
man.
you. That's not
just a question of advising.
Okay.
I don't ask who's advising you. You think it yourself. You're a free man too, aren't you?
You're right. You're right. Okay. I was trying to put it in a nice way.
I use that kind of language, my brother. You want to be respectful.
I was trying to put it in a nice way by saying that you were just a dumb idiot who's being manipulated. I was trying to say that nicely when I said that. Fuck this asshole, dude. Not only is he wrong about everything, he's just, frankly, and I think this is what sells it, his smugness. People see his smugness and they're like, ah, yes, leftists are smug because they are correct. But Jimmy Dore has mastered the art of being smug in the face of being incredibly incorrect, which is frankly a talent.
I'm trying to be respectful. That was
I
my
appreciate it.
okay.
I know it look like hard sometimes, but I appreciate it. But we just have disagreements on these things.
Again,
If I undermine the campaign for you, then you free to have your own view and vision,
Okay.
and people are free to listen to
Okay.
you and be persuaded or not. And I've
Okay.
got mine. I'm listening for your insight. Absolutely right. No doubt about that.
So let me just say this. So the point of running a third-party campaign is to offer an alternative to the two major parties, to bring together disaffected members of those parties, along with independents and others who feel alienated from the political system as it exists. And the best way to do this is by running on economic issues that unite us, but which neither major party is willing to address because they're both beholden to the same powerful corporate interests. The Democratic Party long ago abandoned the working class in favor of beating the drum on cultural issues, and now that's all the Democrats have to run on. So if voters are looking for a party running on trans rights and calling Donald Trump and his supporters white supremacists, they can already vote for Democrats. The role of a third party is to focus not on the identity politics that divide us, but on core economic issues that unite.
I have to use the bathroom, but I'll be right back. Found the source of the Dore producer. Reasons I stopped working with Jimmy Dore. 1. Defended Rittenhouse. JD quoted Blue Lives Matter talking points on air. COVID minimizing / cherry picking stats. Out of control alcoholism and drug use. Verbal abuse of staff. Yelling at me when I was hired as live show producer. Didn't defend me when son of a man who worked for Clinton's smears me on JDS. I have at least 6 videos defending Jimmy with his name. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this JDS is situation. Calling out Jen cost me work at TYT, but I did it because it was the right thing to do. Who is this person? I have no idea who this is. Climate change video, denial videos. Okay, yeah, but long story short, he's just kind of a piece of shit. Which is one of the least surprising things I've ever learned about Jimmy Dore. Here we go.
Unite us along class lines like Christian Smalls did at Staten Island. Do you think he led with LGBTQ trans rights and white supremacy? Or do you think he organized along class lines? That's what we have to do. You have to organize, meet people where they are. So what is your plan to organize along
VCC.
class lines? Or are you going to keep talking about white supremacy and all those identity politics, which are there, not from...
Yeah, you, Cornel West, are you going to continue to talk about white supremacy? Jesus Christ, dude. Yeah, I'm sure Dr. Cornel West, one of the guys who's made combating white supremacy his entire life, is going to stop talking about it on his presidential campaign.
From the ground up, from the top down, to make sure we stay divided. What is your plan to organize along class lines?
Well, I appreciate again the clarity.
By the way, this is not an uncommon talking point among lefties. The idea that you have to choose between, supporting trans people, supporting black and brown people, and supporting people along class lines. It's a false choice. Always has been. It is a false choice designed to prevent collaboration, actually. Because how can you work for your fellow workers if your fellow workers are black and brown, and yet you hold white supremacy in your heart? How can you work for the betterment of your trans brothers and sisters if you are transphobic, if the system you're working under is transphobic as well. The only way that a class movement works is one that is intersectional, one that recognizes the oppression of the various component parts of the movement and then works to overcome the systemic oppression of all. The oppression of some is the oppression of all, type situations. So, rising tide raises all riverboats. Exactly. Sticking with the riverboat theme.
In candor, what you have to say, we have profound disagreements, brother. When I organize around white supremacy, I'm not making some utilitarian calculation. I'm speaking as a black man who comes out of a tradition that's been terrorized and traumatized by white elites. And that does not in any way mean it takes me away from class issues. Class issues are crucial. Class issues are fundamental. But it doesn't mean that I'm putting up with white supremacy. One of the problems.
Yeah, just quick check of chat. Do you guys think it's like a successful workers movement is going to be successful if like a significant number of the workers are black and the workers movement is just blatantly ignoring the fact that they are being discriminated against in the workplace? No, it's not. Actually, that's why these movements have to account for and fight the battles of the different people who are being oppressed within their ranks. Fight for the rights of trans people, fight for the rights of gay people, fight for the rights of black and brown people, fight for the rights of Asian people, fight for the rights of every group that might be discriminated against. And that is how you build an intersectional movement that can actually succeed at doing something. Same with revolution, exactly. Is Jimmy Dore a liberal? Honestly, I wouldn't call Jimmy Dore anything. Jimmy Dore is someone who purports to be a socialist, I believe, but none of the things he talks about are remotely socialist. His entire political position is simply wants to be perceived as farther left than whoever he's talking to, while also spreading like climate change denial, vaccine skepticism, anti-transgender talking points. Like it's not Midwestern Marx core. It's less genuine than that, because I believe that people like Midwestern Marx genuinely believe the delusions that they're under. Jimmy Dore, I don't think, has any coherent political stance. I think he is merely out for posturing himself in a way that makes him money. That's what I think about Jimmy Dore. I don't know that he has any actual politics. Lefty McLefterson, I am inclined to think that Jimmy Dore is a nosball, but I haven't watched enough of his content to actually like back up that conclusion, so I've just been kind of like not necessarily putting that label on it.
Is that you get too many folk who want to talk class, and can't say a mumbling word about white supremacy, police brutality, can't say a mumbling word hardly. Or when they do say it, you call it identity politics as if it's not connected to class. I'm hitting these head on. I'm standing with the workers when it...
Yeah. Jimmy, when you talk about identity politics and you're talking about black and brown people and discrimination against them, does that not also involve discussion of class? Right? Does that not involve discussion of class? Like, when we're talking about the discrimination against black and brown people, a not insignificant amount of it comes because black and brown people were owned as property for 400 years in this country. And by nature of being owned as property, did not accumulate the same amount of wealth as a lot of people currently in the working class and middle class. And so they got fucked over. They got screwed over for centuries. And then after emancipation, they got screwed over for another 100 years. Denied rights to vote, denied the ability to live where they would like to, or denied the ability to build generational wealth. This continued, which makes the issue of race an issue of class. Additionally, you can make those same connections with things like trans people or gay people, because it turns out there are a lot of complicated economic factors that go into how trans and gay people are socialized and discriminated against. This is core to understanding and building a successful workers' movement. You can't do it unless you recognize that there are material realities behind the discrimination that need to be addressed collectively, and the only way that we can effectively address them is by recognizing that we need to, the fight for one is the fight for all. Like, we need to fight for each other. We need to support each other. It's the only way we win. Turns out, people power needs to respect the people involved.
When it comes to strikes, I'm standing with the workers when it comes to greedy bosses. I'm standing with the workers when it comes to obsession with profits and the needs not in any way being satisfied. But I'll never for a minute be silent. I'm not or not raising my voice in terms of vicious treatment of Black people, indigenous people, gay brothers, lesbian sisters, or trans. It's not an either or. And that's
now, I do want to say one thing. I've criticized Cornel West in the past on some of his political analysis, on his decision to run third party, especially in the way he's been conducting his campaign. But one thing I will never criticize Cornel West on is leaving people behind. You know, he's an older guy, but he still recognizes the need to stand with and protect and fight for trans rights. That's so important. It's so important. And he cares. God bless him. He cares. And I think that is a very admirable quality in a world full of politicians who don't care. I wish he was instead running within the Democratic Party against Joe Biden, but I can't fault him for caring. That's something I wish more people did. That's how I feel about him as well. Yeah.
That's where you and I have a deep, profound disappointment. So if I see, for example, if I watch your show and I notice you hardly say a mumbling word about white supremacy because it's some kind of identity politics and I'm against it, but I don't want to talk about it. I only want to talk about what people hold in common. Well, Black people are not going to hold it in common if you don't say a word about white supremacy, but maybe some of your white friends will. So who are you talking about? You're talking about
God damn, get his ass, Cornel West.
In common. Are you talking about just a majority or what, my dear brother? I will never, ever in a million years not talk about vicious legacies of white supremacy, male supremacy, homophobia, transphobia, and others. But class will always be very much at the center. What brings you and I together is what? Our fundamental solidarity with working classes, not just here, but around the world. But oftentimes when I hear about your show and you say, well, you know, these identity politics issues get in the way. No, it's 100%. Not getting in the way. They're not getting in the way.
100%. They're used by so the Democrats, that's all they have to run on. And when you say that,
I can't take Jimmy Dore smugly trying to lecture Cornel West that Cornel West doesn't understand identity politics, while completely ignoring that identity politics and class politics are inseparable. Wait, did he mute him?
100%. They're used by so the Democrats, that's all.
Oh my God, you can see it happen. You can literally
100%.
In the way. They're not getting in the way.
100%. They're used by so the Democrats.
You can see his hand move over to the mute button in the lower corner of the screen. That is incredible.
You know, these identity politics issues get in the way. No, it's 100%. Not getting in the way. You're not getting into
100%. They're used by so the Democrats, that's all they have.
Oh my god. You have to, like, Cornel West is the type of guy who can talk to literally anybody while being respectful, right? Like, he can go on Fox News and make his points and make really great arguments for leftist positions without having his feathers overly ruffled by, you know, hostile and combative hosts. But, like, you can feel the rage coming off of him in this moment.
Have to run on, and when you say that stuff, you just sound like a Democrat because that's all they have.
But
So
that's
if
exactly
you
wrong.
need,
If to talk about
Okay.
the dignity of black people in the face of
That's not-
vicious white supremacy makes me sound like a Democrat, you got the wrong earplug.
okay,
You're not listening clearly. Because if you can't hear the critique of Wall Street, if you can't hear the critique of militarism, if you can't hear the critique of his foreign policy in Ukraine, and all you can hear when it
Like, oh yeah, I also vehemently disagree with Cornel West's position on Ukraine, but that's for another day.
talk about white supremacy's identity
Really?
politics, then something's wrong with your earplug, though, bro.
Yes, he is calling Jimmy
Something's
Dore
wrong.
stupid.
We
Okay.
just have deep disagreement with
Okay.
that. But
It's
it is what it
disappointing.
is. It is what it is. You are profoundly disappointing in that sense. But I still love you, brother.
I still love you too. I still love you too.
Oh my god. You know, also to Cornel West's credit, there are very few people who can call someone like a stupid motherfucker in such a polite and kind way. I love it.
I know you. I know I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm talking about having a campaign.
Oh yeah, no, undoubtedly. Shark is 100% correct, Casper Cosmic Lord. Like, Cornel West has never, ever, to my knowledge, been muted by Fox News. He has never been muted by CNN. He has never, in even the most hostile interview location, been muted on a show he was invited to be on. And this is this is very interesting. Thanks. I was going to ask you about what C West. Nani. Oh, hiccups.
I'm not. There's a okay. So,
But the
He literally was denied the ability to talk on Jimmy's show.
campaign is not about
look at
utilitarian
Flash.
calculation either. I don't look at black people like a utilitarian calculation. I can't say nothing because these people over here somehow are alienated. I'm telling the truth. I'm fighting for justice. And if people feel as if to talk about white supremacy is alienating, then they're going to be alienated. I'm talking about my mama. I'm talking about my daddy. This ain't no abstract dialogue about politics in the Machiavellian sense.
But also, like, even if you wanted to have an abstract discussion about politics, like, undeniably, class and identity are linked in America, and basically anywhere else you go. I'm not aware of any place on the planet where that is not the case.
Not at all,
so
my brother.
what when
Not at
Bernie
all. So
caught
when we march together for class politics, we march together because that's real. But if you think that talking about white supremacy is just identity politics, we got deep disagreement. That's all.
so
I'm sorry to go on, and
No,
you're very kind to let me go
no,
on.
go right ahead. No, go right ahead. I don't. And honest, everything I'm saying here coming from my heart. I want your campaign to
Absolutely.
succeed, and I want.
Yeah, it's really coming from the heart. Again, on the video you titled "Cornel West does 45-minute commercial for Joe Biden." Yeah, I'm sure you really want his campaign to do well.
I want you to have the strongest campaign possible. But Bernie caught on because
Justice for all chat.
Kyryu, thank you for gifting a sub to No Look at Flash. I appreciate it. Thank you for supporting me, chat. Again, without your financial support, I would not be able to do this show. So thank you so much to people who are throwing subs and donos my way throughout stream. This show is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you so goddamn much.
he would always, if he was given a cultural question or an identity politics question, he would always bring it back to class and economics. And it doesn't. Well, here I was talking to one of Bernie's campaign managers, and this is what he said. Yes, I personally agree white supremacy is one of the causes. But if I lose two potential allies because they roll their eyes and stop listening before I get to their concerns, I've already lost. The civil rights advancements, women's rights, the environmental movement, they didn't happen because people like my dad voted Democrat because that stuff mattered to them. It happened because Democrats appealed to them on economic issues, and a lot of the Democrats they voted for because of economics also happened to vote for that other stuff.
Yeah. But do you think maybe the economic stuff might have had different levels of appeal for different groups of people in America based on their economic class position, as well as what the identity they had meant about that class position?
And it doesn't work in the inverse. So I'm just giving that to you.
Right. No, I understand. But you can see again how I disagree. Keep in mind, bro, civil rights movement was not because of white folk doing X or Y. It was because it was a social movement led by black people in the South that was multiracial, but led primarily by black folk. And neither party would have done anything without that social movement.
100% right. You're 100% right. No doubt about it. And I think
but that's my tradition. That's my tradition. How can you talk about?
No, I love to hear you talk about all that stuff, and that's good for a radical black activist who's representing his community. But I'm just trying to impress upon you that there's better ways to run a presidential campaign, and so that for a black radical activist, that's great. That's honey. But for someone who's trying to,
what's really interesting to me is that Jimmy Dore, literally like a minute ago, tried to bash Bernie Sanders by talking about how one of Bernie Sanders' people was talking about, you know, needing to maintain relationships with allies, you know, like a politician might. And now he's making the exact opposite argument here, which is very interesting to me.
Appeal to a wide swath of people, disaffected Republicans, independents, people. That's a death for that campaign. That's my opinion. That's just
well, yeah. We'll have to see, but keep in mind.
I love that Jimmy Dore literally just said it's death for a campaign to talk about white supremacy. What an absolute. I mean, yeah, someone in chat said it, and the more I've been thinking about it, the more correct. Jimmy Dore is not just the entryway to the dumb left. That's just kind of the main group of them as they slowly metastasize into something worse. You know? He's the gateway to the conveyor belt that leads his supporters down from apathy to disaffectedness and into finally the black pill of leftism, which is Nesbill. He ultimately is leading his followers to be like, oh well, we can't care about the trans people, we can't care about black people, we can't care about, you know, any type of other people. It just has to be class, and if that means we have to fuck over every other minority group, so be it. And ultimately, that just leads you to fucking Nazis. You know, the national Bolsheviks. This is I think, ultimately where Jimmy Dore is leading his folks. And I don't know if that's you know, I've been waffling in this segment about whether or not it's intentional for him to lead them there, but I don't think it ultimately matters, right? Like I don't think it matters if Nick Fuentes is, you know, sincerely, you know, a Nazi, right? What matters is that he leads his audience to being sincere Nazis. And I think that Jimmy Dore is just very, very similar. Just from the left.
Though, brother, that one, I've never ever said that all of the followers of Brother Trump are fascists. I said he's a neo-fascist Pied Piper. His followers, 1 out of 8 went with Bernie, 1 out of 12 went with Barack Obama. He's got a heterogeneous, diverse group. And I can speak my language of truth and justice as it connects to capitalism, imperialism, white supremacy, male supremacy, transphobia, whatever it is.
Man, almost like identity politics and class issues are linked, inseparable. It's almost like Cornel West knows that. And it's so frustrating to hear him say it over and over and over again. And the only response he's going to get from Jimmy Dore is sneering condescension.
And there's going to be some people who listen, and there's going to be some people who don't. But this is not just a question of political calculation and Machiavellian reflection, brother. This is about the quest for truth and justice. You got to be real. You got to be authentic. I'm not listening to consultants who tell me to use this particular kind of language with this group and this kind of language with that group. That is the essence of managerial bourgeois politics. I reject it.
So I heard you say one time that.
Wait, why did they cut? What did they cut out of this conversation? I'm
kind of language with that group. That is the essence of managerial bourgeois politics. I reject it.
So I heard you.
Right? Like that was a cut, right? Yeah, no. His hands are in different positions here. So something was cut out of this conversation.
So I heard you say one time that someone asked you that same question, why don't you call Joe Biden a fascist, but you call Donald Trump a fascist? And one time you said that it was because Donald Trump criminalizes and demonizes his political opponents, and that's what fascists do. Well, of course, now they've been trying to criminalize and put in jail Donald Trump, Joe Biden's #1 political opponent, just like they did in
for actual substantiated crimes that we all saw as a country.
Brazil and Pakistan.
They were literally crimes done on camera. The people representing him went and did interviews on television about it, basically declaring, "Hey, we're doing crimes." Like, this isn't remotely the same as like just going after your political opponents. This is not an Alexander Navalny situation where the Russian government arrested him because he opposed Putin. You know, like this isn't remotely the same thing.
And so the global elite is doing this to anybody, and they'll do it to you if you actually become a threat. They will criminalize you. They've already started to call you right-wing and white supremacist yourself, and that's the game. They'll call you a sexist.
Wait, is foreign policy fascism, or does it make you fascist if your domestic policy is Joe Biden's? I would argue that the United States' foreign policy isn't fascism, it's imperialism. And Joe Biden's domestic policy is absolutely not fascist. Neoliberal, yes, but not fascist.
They're going to call you, your followers are going to be sexist, violent, racist, and white supremacist, all that. You've already been called a right-winger by the establishment. So that's the game that they play. And what they're doing right now is trying to throw in prison anybody who the donor class doesn't want to run and is going to win, they'll throw in prison. They'll do it to Bernie. They russiagated Bernie. They said all his followers were sexist and racist and violent. They said the same thing that they say about Trump. And they would have criminalized Bernie and put him in jail if he had a spine and he would have stood up to the establishment instead of folding into it. So it's important, I think, that people call out what's happening right now.
What the fuck is he talking about? But what did you want Bernie Sanders, like, again, I'm sorry, like, I know asking the question, like, what did you expect Bernie Sanders to do? Like, take a pistol onto the Senate floor? Like, what? Just start capping other senators? Like, is that what you expected him to do? And then he would be thrown in prison? Like, that's insane. What did you want him to do? But the other half of that is that Jimmy Dore doesn't actually care about what Bernie Sanders does. The thing that Bernie Sanders did that makes Jimmy Dore madder than hell is the fact that Bernie Sanders didn't want to come on his show. Bernie Sanders turned down the opportunity to go on Jimmy Dore's show, and it eats him up inside. He doesn't care about the politics. He doesn't care about the positions. He cares about having his ego flattered. Which, by the way, is also why he turned on AOC, as well as, like, the Squad. Like, these positions are not based on any actual politics. The political reasons he thinks they're bad are conjured up ad hoc. You know, like, just as needed after the fact. It doesn't matter. What really matters is that they made him angry and or sad by not coming on his show. Honestly, Sam Olson, I would say it doesn't make you fascist, just imperialist and colonizer. You know? Like, for example, I don't think that supporting Saudi Arabia makes the United States monarchist, even though they have a monarchy for a government. I just think it's part of the imperialist doctrine, you know?
Now, I don't like Trump one bit. I oppose almost everything he says. And but he called for ending NATO, so I join him with that. And I'll join with anybody to do good and nobody to do wrong. Okay.
Same here. I'm with you I'm with you on that too.
And so what's happening right now is
Yeah, you know, the number one thing we really need to do right now, as Russia is invading a country in Europe, is to end the defensive alliance that prevents Russia from invading other countries in Europe.
Usually do in third world countries, but they're doing it right here. The donor class doesn't want Donald Trump to become president, and he will if he's allowed to run. And so they did this. They're now 4 different indictments, each one more ridiculous than the last. And here, RICO, the Georgia anti-racketeering law, is being used to charge Donald Trump. And now the reason I bring this up is because they're the same people that did that to Donald Trump are using the RICO charges to go after activists from Stop Cop City.
And as we all know, anyone who's charged under RICO is the same. You know, when the mob was charged with RICO, was hit with RICO charges, you know, that means the mob is the same as those protesters, and those protesters are the same as Trump, and that's exactly the same. Every crime that happens under a given charge is the same. Like, what are you talking about? This is nonsense reasoning. This is a complete capitulation to the forces of illogic.
So let me just give you this story, and then you can comment on it. So
Sure.
Georgia prosecutors have filed racketeering charges against 61 people accused of involvement with Stop Cop City, a protest movement against a controversial Atlanta police training facility.
By the way, all of those charges filed with very slim and flimsy evidence. It would not surprise me if most of them got off. But additionally, this is not the same as prosecuting the former president of the United States. And I shouldn't have to point that out, except that I know that people who watch Jimmy Dore need that pointed out to them.
Facility. The list of defendants suggests that the case implicates people who have already been arrested on tenuous evidence, like a legal observer who was jailed while monitoring protests, activists who ran a bail fund for other defendants, and a trio of activists arrested while handing out flyers with the name of a cop who killed a fellow protester. The RICO charges come as Georgia's RICO statute receives national attention.
Oh yeah, look, I'm not saying it's good that they're getting charged. I'm just saying, like, this is the reason they are being charged is completely different from why Donald Trump is being charged with RICO. This is not at all related. At all. Now, he's about to say the same grand jury that indicted Trump on RICO charges also indicted the Stop Cop City defendants. But, like, and they're different cases. Well, the argument they're trying to make is that this is retaliation for Trump's indictment, but it just doesn't work. Like, that's the argument they're saying is like, oh yeah, you want to charge someone for murder? We'll charge someone of your guys for murder. And like, it just doesn't, crimes don't work that way, actually. Do we know that it's the same jury? It's according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I saw that being circulated earlier as well. But like, this is like one of the most tenuous connections. Indicting the protesters would make Trump people happy, but like, again, I don't think it's the same thing. You know, they aren't indicting Trump to make anti-Trump people happy. They're doing it because they have a huge list of evidence of the crime he committed, right? And meanwhile, they're like, conservatives might see this as like, see, we're going after your guys now that you went after our guy. But like, that's just like delusional, you know, fantasy thinking, you know? It's not reality.
Donald Trump and a collection of his associates were charged under the state's severe RICO statute last month. The same grand jury that indicted Donald Trump on RICO charges also indicted the Stop Cop City defendants. Are you getting the game now? The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported that on Tuesday, the Cop City Vote Coalition, a group that gathered more than 100,000 signatures to put the facility's construction up for a vote this year, condemned the charges as authoritarian measures by Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr. The group also noted that charging documents described the alleged racketeering scheme as beginning before the police training facility was even announced.
Also, now, I'm not super familiar with how grand juries work, but my impression was that grand juries were assembled for different serious criminal charges, right? And that the people on the grand jury were not the same people between different assemblies of a grand jury. Is that incorrect? Paladin, you have some insight on this? So, like, even if it was, quote-unquote, the same grand jury, it would have different people on it, yeah? A grand jury is basically cover for a prosecutor who wants to evaluate charges. Okay. So, like, it being the same grand jury doesn't necessarily have a ton of experience. You convene a grand jury the same way you would convene a regular jury. So it's not like, oh, they had extra time after the grand jury convened for Donald Trump, and they just decided to convene and, like, go through 61 additional defendants. It doesn't work that way. Okay.
Lauren Reagan, executive director of the Civil Liberties Defense Fund, which has been working in support of defendants, said the scope of the case is designed to dissuade people from supporting the Stop Cop City movement. It's been very clear that Georgia's intentions and how they've conducted themselves regarding the resistance to Cop City has been...
Yeah, it's the chances of them pulling the same 12 to 18 people just doesn't make any sense at all.
To try and scare even above ground law-abiding participants from taking part. I think by roping in a legal observer and people running a nonprofit and running a lawful bail fund is absolutely intended to scare people from supporting this cause now and in the future. In September of
Okay, but none of this has anything to do with the Donald Trump's RICO charges.
2021, Atlanta approved plans to build a police training facility dubbed Cop City by opponents.
Wait, is Cornel West even still here? Okay, no, he does show up. It's just another 4 minutes from now. Jimmy Dore is just doing like a 10-minute long presentation in the middle of his interview. That's crazy.
In the city's South River Forest. The plans were controversial. Approximately 70% of locals who weighed in during a public comment opposed the facility, citing its cost, $90 million, its environmental impact, and its potential effect on over-policing in Atlanta.
Okay, but like, say you have a charge against somebody, Donald Trump, and then you find out he was part of a criminal organization, you can make it a RICO case and add defendants to your indictment. Right, but in order for these two like the indictment of the Stop Cop City protesters and the indictment against Donald Trump to have anything to do with each other and to have the same grand jury, they would also have to be included in the Donald Trump indictment, which isn't the case. So it's a different grand jury. Like, maybe same court system, but like a different grand jury. Different set of people.
When the city moved ahead with the plans for construction, activists protested on the proposed construction site. Police shot and killed a protester, Manuel Tortuga Esteban Paez Terán, in January when they accused Terán of firing a gun. Subsequent autopsies have cast doubt on those claims. Soon after Terán's killing, police charged 19 more Stop Cop City activists with terrorism, despite many being accused of nothing more than misdemeanor trespassing around the proposed construction site. In a later crackdown, police conducted mass arrests at Stop Cop City Music Festival, accusing some people of engaging in property damage at a nearby protest. On the questionable basis that those people allegedly had mud on their shoes. The music festival was held in a forest. One of those legal observers was an attorney with the Southern Poverty Law Center and the National Lawyers Guild. Footage appears to show Thomas Jurgens being arrested while...
Okay, here's how federal grand juries work. Okay. Requires grand juries to be composed of 16 to 23 members, and that 12 members must concur in an indictment. A grand jury is instructed to return an indictment if the probable cause standard has been met. The grand jury's decision is either a true bill, formerly Via Evera, resulting in an indictment, or no true bill. So then they select the select people. The grand jury is secret, and this is, again, as I'm looking at this, very, very much seems to be for one particular case. You know, like, grand juries are convened to hear whether or not there will be an indictment on one given case.
While wearing one of the neon green hats that identifies NLG legal observers. We had some differences. When I say we, I mean myself and the Attorney General's office, about who should be charged with what they should be charged with, Boston told WABE. She added that Jurgens' case was one of the touch points of a number of touch points.
Okay, we're going to skip through this because I do not care about Jimmy Dore reading this to Cornel West. Someone who I'm sure has never heard of Cop City before in his life.
It's exactly what. And
Let me get a word in. Let me get a word in.
So I'm going to let you. So I
just real quick. He starts talking about 32 minutes in. We haven't heard from Cornel West since the weird cut at, like, we'll say 26 minutes. So in the middle of this interview, Jimmy just goes on a 6-minute long presentation. That's crazy. You have Cornel West at your disposal, and you're just ignoring him to give your own PowerPoint presentation. Yeah.
I just want you to. So
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Take it where you will.
I'm very glad that you're zeroing in on the struggle.
Oh, congratulations to
shut down
Gremlo.
Cop City. I'm in deep solidarity with them. We're working together in the coming weeks, virtually and so forth. But there's a logical fallacy, a rational gap in your attempt to compare freedom fighters against a vicious system in the name of everyday folk in ghettos, in hoods, and working class communities against the police versus Trump. Trump, I'm not in solidarity with Trump. I want him to have a fair trial. I'm not in solidarity with Trump simply because they use.
Oh, okay, wait. There's a difference here. They're talking about a special grand jury. Special grand juries are different from grand juries. Special grand juries sit for 2 months and hear multiple cases. The difference is their findings are non-binding. An SPGJ makes an informal recommendation. Okay. So, basically, an informal grand jury was convened for the Stop Cop City protesters, and it offered a non-binding resolution. So, like, the SPGJ recommended that charges be brought against Lindsey Graham, but the prosecutor said no? Okay. Was that same special grand jury convened for the Trump indictment? Because I feel like that would necessitate a real grand jury, you know?
Use the same law against courageous, visionary freedom fighters against police brutality and police murder versus the same law against a gangster like Trump. Doesn't put Trump on a spectrum with freedom fighters, brother, at all. It doesn't put him on the spectrum at all. That's the fundamental difference.
What? I'm sorry, I missed that because Jimmy started trying to talk over him. Weird.
Against a gangster like Trump doesn't put Trump on a spectrum with freedom fighters, brother, at all. It doesn't put him on the spectrum at all. That's the fundamental difference between you and I in this case.
Oh, like, was that his wife saying something off screen? Seemed like it.
But I'm glad you're talking about shutting down Cop City, because we know it's planned to be in a number of other cities as well. When I'm in Mississippi, it was a goon squad. The goon squad is shot through cities across the country. We saw it in Memphis, it's in Atlanta, it's in Chicago. But the idea of you recognizing that the same weaponization against these courageous freedom fighters is somehow on a spectrum with Trump, I radically reject that. I want a fair trial, but I think he's probably done a number of things that warrants a serious fair trial with him going to jail, but we shall see.
So you're for prosecuting the last president after he loses an election. You think that's a good way to run a democracy? Because again, you don't see the connection that this is the donor.
I love how Jimmy is trying to pretend that he's an anti-fascist here, that he's against fascism. And is in favor of protecting democracy by saying, "Oh, really? You want to elect the guy who tried to overthrow you want to prosecute the guy who tried to overthrow democracy? You think prosecuting a fascist is a good way to protect our democracy? Really? Like that's crazy."
Owner class criminalizing anybody who they don't like, and they'll do it to you, and they'll do it to Bernie, and they'll do it to anybody else. And so you don't have to like Donald Trump. I don't at all, but I see what the game is being played here, and you don't see that game being played. You don't see this game, really.
I see the game, the same law against the Proud Boys.
I think Cornel West is seeing Jimmy's game. I think that's what he's seeing right now.
I wanted a fair trial. I wanted to make sure they're treated, but at the same time,
they're doing
the fact
to the
that they are being weaponized. But I think your support of Trump is deeper than you acknowledge. You keep saying, "I don't like Trump. I don't like Trump." How can you compare Trump with freedom fighters against the police?
I'm not comparing. I'm not comparing that. I'm saying that
you are. You
I'm saying no. I'm not saying. I'm not.
Get his ass, Cornel. Get his ass. Put him in a chokehold.
Of course, they're going to use it against anybody who.
It's the government. Okay. That's amazing that you don't see this. It is unbelievable that you don't see this. This is such a loser for you.
There's opportunity to show the deep differences. Very deep differences, though. But you do what you got to do, and I'm doing what I got to do, and I learn from you. And I hope you can learn a little bit from me, but we shall see.
The biggest story of my life.
Okay, we got another cut. So far, they've made 2 really interesting cuts going through here. And I don't know why. Why would you cut out segments of this interview? Why? That's very interesting to me.
Lifetime if it wasn't Russiagate, which led directly to the Ukraine war. And I said it was going to in 2017 when they did this. And I told everybody at the Young Turks, they're going to use this to start a war. They're going to use this. And they did. And so here we are. And so what I want to...
Oh, yeah. No, look at Flash. In riverboat.gg chat, you can share whatever links you want.
The second biggest story is probably the COVID lockdown, if not the biggest. And so many people who were supposed to be out in front.
I do have to say, mad respect to Kyle Kalinske for basically coming out and being like, I was wrong, and suddenly adopting much better positions. I genuinely, much respect for Kyle Kalinske. Frankly, I appreciate it. I appreciate that he has proven himself to be someone who can take in information and change his mind. That's a very rare thing in these spaces.
Front on this, drop the ball. People like Noam Chomsky. So here's the Green Party, what they said. They said the Green Party, which you're running with, the Green Party of the United States.
Who, no, look at Flash. Who do you consider part of the dirtbag left? Just out of curiosity.
Universal free school.
I'm just gonna throw this up real quick as a breath of fresh air.
Legal weed. And you're on the left. You can acknowledge a W in the instances you get it while still pushing for more. I mean, a perfect example is what's happening in Minnesota right now. Minnesota has a 1-seat Democrat majority. We got universal free school meals, legal weed, carbon-free electricity by 2040, tax rebates for the working class up to $1,300 if you make under $150,000 a year, 12 weeks paid family leave, 12 weeks paid sick leave. They banned conversion therapy. They did red flag laws for guns. They did universal background checks for guns. They did...
My state is really great. I like living in Minnesota quite a bit. It's so nice.
Automatic voter registration, public free college if you make under 80K, a ban on PFAs, which is the forever chemicals, $2.2 billion increase in K-12 school funding, sectoral bargaining for nursing home workers. These things are all not little wins. They are huge wins. And I still see this insistence like we're back in 2016 or something where people are like, nope, Democrats and Republicans are either equally bad or actually jujitsu move, Republicans are the lesser evil. And I think it's idiotic. It's doom.
I just want to point out that Kyle Kalinske has a single earring going on here. I believe you can see it right here. And you know what? I initially thought the hair dye. I thought I did not care for it. But you know what? Him embracing it and then going for an ear piercing. You know what? You son of a bitch! You got me back. I'm on board with his style again.
Evil. And I think it's idiotic. It's doomerist. It's nihilist. It's people who are refusing to acknowledge reality, and they'd rather narrative hump all day talking about Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, but oh yeah, I'm a leftist.
Holy shit, she's so mad. She looks so fucking mad that he pointed out that Democrats in Minnesota actually did good things.
Going back to the student debt point.
Oh, I just like her so much. Dude. I think Brianna Joy Gray is one of the most disingenuous people in leftist spaces. You know, I think she's very much adjacent to Jimmy Dore. And frankly, I'll bring it up. I'll continue bringing it up until the day I die. It's real fucking weird that she hasn't distanced herself from the person who helped her launch this podcast, Virgil Texas, who disappeared into the ether as soon as he was accused of grooming underage girls. It's really fucking weird that he's still on, like, the branding for the show that she does. It's very deeply weird, and she's never, to my knowledge, addressed it. And I think that is very, very weird. Just throwing that out there. So, anyway, just a brief little break from Jimmy Dore. I'm sorry, this will make your brain hurt by, doing a little bit of Jimmy Dore and then taking a short break and then doing it again. It will hurt you. I'm sorry for that.
State Steering Committee strongly supports the use of vaccines, vaccine mandates, and quarantines as part of a comprehensive public health effort to curb and eradicate the novel coronavirus pandemic that has swept the globe since early 2020.
Oh my god, is he attacking Cornel West because the Green Party supports the use of vaccines? Oh my god, dude.
The whole thing was a hoax. And here's what the Black Caucus of the Green Party said.
Wait, the whole thing was a hoax? I'm sorry. Did he just say COVID was a hoax?
Chomsky. So here's the Green Party, what they said. They said the Green Party, which you're running with, the Green Party of the United States Steering Committee strongly supports the use of vaccines, vaccine mandates, and quarantines as part of a comprehensive public health effort to curb and eradicate the novel coronavirus pandemic that has swept the globe since early 2020. The whole thing was a hoax. And
what? Over 1 million people died, Jimmy. Over 1 million people in just America died from COVID. It wasn't a hoax, you motherfucker.
Here's what the Black Caucus of the Green Party said. They said the National Black Caucus of the Green Party of the United States strongly opposes the use of forced vaccination via mandates and the discrimination.
I know he's been anti-vax the whole time, but I thought he was clever enough to at least hide it behind like, oh, I'm just skeptical of the vaccine. I didn't think he was going around just saying straight up that COVID itself was a hoax. That's insane.
That is being generated around these policies. Lockdowns, mandates, and passports are the major issue of the day, with millions of people protesting against them worldwide. In fact, what has become known as the medical freedom movement is arguably the biggest and most diverse international movement in world history. Vaccine mandates and vaccine passports are among the most vile, unconstitutional, immoral, unscientific, discriminatory, and outright criminal policies ever forced upon the population, and goes against everything the Green Party stands for under social justice. These policies are coming.
Oh my god, dude. I can't take how he's not just talking to his guest, who I need to remind you is Dr. Cornel West. So that just another several minutes of him just reading.
Heal themselves in a manner that best supports their medical
good night,
spiritual
Archangel.
beliefs.
Get good sleep.
I just wanted. I don't understand why you aren't outraged by that. Do you share the sentiment of the Black Caucus of the Green Party, and have you talked to them?
Well, one thing, it's good to have a Green Party where you have a variety of different voices that are clashing and the tensions are very real. I think there's no doubt that the pharmaceutical company has played a disproportionate role in shaping public policy. I think the kind of concerns that you and RFK Jr. and others have certainly are well grounded in that sense. On the other hand, we know there's been a whole host of vaccines in regard to other kinds of illnesses that are much more effective. The question becomes making sure, and one of the things I want to do, I want to have a truth commission to find out exactly what was the level of corruption that took place during these years, be able to see not just the text, we know the books are out there, but to have a truth commission so that we can see what voices were marginalized, what voices were pushed aside, and make sure it never happens again. I resonate with the spirit of what my green Black brothers and sisters are saying, but the Green Party itself does allow this kind of disagreement and so on. But I'll say this though, brother, I know I got
we only have 4 minutes of this left, thank God.
To go, but I must say, see, this is where you and I do in some ways live in different worlds, because as crucial and as important as the issue of vaccines and the COVID situation was, when you say that's probably the most important issue in your lifetime or in the last 25 or 30 years, in light of all the wars, in light of what Palestinians are going through, in light of what workers are going through, 63% of them are living paycheck to paycheck, in terms of all the vicious attacks of the police and the murders and so forth, yet this vaccine issue is the most important thing. I say, okay, that's my dear brother Jimmy. He's got a right to raise his voice. I'm not going to in any way push it away, but I just live in a different world. As important as vaccines have been, if I had another chance, I'd be leaning much more with the Black Caucus. But when I think of the weightiest issues, vaccines does not come immediately to mind. It just doesn't.
I mean, I'm glad that Dr. Cornel West came down on that position, but it is somewhat like a bit of a double take there that he even was like, well, we need to figure out which voices in this were marginalized. Well, by and large, the voices that were marginalized in this were people who were fucking insane and saying things like vaccines give your children autism. And as far as I'm concerned, those people don't deserve the time of day. And that's from me, someone who's on the autism spectrum.
That's the kind of world we live in, brother.
Okay.
Maybe I spend, you know.
Well, here it is. The black business owners collapsed by 41%. Black business because of lockdowns. Do you care yet?
Well, no,
70,000 workers in one state were fired because of vaccine mandates. When are you going to care? Do they all have to be trans? When are you going to care about these workers? What are you going to care about? What are you going to care about this?
They have to be trans for me to care.
You don't care. You don't care. Why don't you care about this?
Why would you accuse me? Of course I care about it.
You're saying it's not important.
I didn't say it wasn't important.
Yeah, honestly, Jimmy's just looking for an issue to like try and make. I'm the only real lefty here. That's what he's trying to do here, because he knows full well that Cornel West just said he doesn't think it is the most important issue. The most important one. He's not saying it's not important, just that it's not the most important one, which is, you know, Jimmy though is trying to completely frame Cornel West as like, someone who's capitulated to the Bidens, which again is exactly why the name of this video is Cornel West does 45-minute commercial for Joe Biden.
I said it was not the most fundamental issue in my lifetime the last 30 years.
Forced medical experiments? Forced medical experiments that the scheme.
Where is the nuance?
Oh my God.
Where's the complexity?
So you missed this story and you're not interested in getting it right.
You agree with Jimmy Dore.
So you missed this story and you're not interested. Well, Dr. West, I wish you the best. You know I love you. You know I support.
You and your precious wife and your family. You stay strong, though, brother.
Okay, I wish you all the best. I love you. Thanks for coming on. I really do wish you all the best. And I just wish you had a clearer message to reach people, but you don't. It's muddled and it's a loser.
Oh my God, dude. Jimmy Dore is not to be trusted. Jimmy Dore is a snake. He is a viper. And if he gets his fangs into you, he will pull you down into leftist apathy and inaction that will slowly metastasize into the cancerous tumor of Nazbolism, okay? Like, this is disgusting. Yeah, like we've gone over Cornel West's campaign page. He has 3 issues on his campaign page. His campaign is relatively weak. It's not very good. It has the potential to strip Biden of some pretty crucial support, which I think is bad. But like the fact that I came out of this being like Cornel West is based as fuck is a testament to how bad Jimmy Dore is. Cornel was entirely too close to anti-vax. Well, yeah, he's too close to anti-vax. His political calculations for running third party in 2024 are wrong and erroneous. And his position on Ukraine is completely untenable, you know? These are kind of the positions that I have. He better drop out eventually. I think he will eventually. I think he's kind of trying to do a Bernie, but what if Bernie was third party? I think he is going to eventually de facto endorse Biden and drop out of the race. We'll see what happens. But especially in this interview, it was interesting to see him kind of acknowledge that Donald Trump is indeed a fascist threat to democracy. And to acknowledge that Bernie Sanders is right to fear the fascism of Donald Trump. You know, I think that's really interesting. And to me, that would indicate that he will drop out at some point. If you ever wonder why Jimmy Dore fans are such pudding brain motherfuckers, remember this video? Yeah, no. They're like fresh clay waiting to be molded by a moron. Jimmy took the hardest L. Like I've never seen someone get so get Cornel West so angry. It's wild, frankly. And see. Well, chat, I've been streaming now for about 3.5 hours. If you've been enjoying stream, please hit the follow button over on Twitch. Hit the like button on the stream if you're watching on YouTube or riverboat.gg. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't over on YouTube. I have been really, really busy this past week, but I would really like this weekend to cut together videos from my streams over the past week so we have more content going up on the YouTube. It's just something that can be really time consuming, and it's been difficult to balance this week. But that means we have a lot of content coming to YouTube soon, so keep an eye out for that. Yeah, we've been doing so many different segments. Oh wait, just bonus content real quick. Oh my god, I did not realize Jimmy Dore added. I thought he was going to just like shit talk Cornel West for the remainder, like several minutes of the video. Just real quick.
Fuddled and at the show, and who was the leading guy pushing back on the COVID narrative. And he's one of the leading doctors in the world, the most cited in his field, the most...
Dude's just selling Brain Force Plus pills. He's just fucking pulling an Alex Jones.
Referenced and most published.
Sounds like fringe to me.
Very fringe. So he has joined the wellness company to create a real change in healthcare. They offer everything from live telehealth appointments to medical emergency kits with ivermectin.
He's fucking selling ivermectin. Yeah, this guy's against Big Pharma, which is why he sold out to, like, pseudoscientific, like, snake oil salesmen. Yeah. Okay, yeah, you really care about people's health, Jimmy.
Which
Whoa.
the FDA now says doctors can prescribe for COVID. That's what the FDA
right.
said.
They were cracking down. Then they had to say it's okay.
That you can prescribe it. They don't say it works, but they say you can prescribe it. And doctor-formulated supplements to deal with post-pandemic ill issues like vaccine injuries and shedding, which is I actually was in a study because I was vaccine injured. And
they said wear a mask,
and they and so they have a protocol to help you get over it, and it helped me. The wellness company's it's called Spike Support Formula is a natural and by the way, I have to say the vaccine injuries are very rare.
Yeah, so
very
screw you
rare.
if you got one.
Very rare.
We don't have to think about you if it happened to you.
The wellness company's Spike Support Formula is a natural inflammatory.
Just, oh my god, dude. Oh my god. Get back to that pre-COVID feeling. Vaccinated or not, toxic spike proteins pose a long-term threat to your health. This is just bullshit. This is just for $66. Oh my god, dude. What a fucking hack fraud.
Supplement.
Guys, if I'm ever selling you brain pills, please just put me down like Old Yeller, okay?
Spike Support contains a unique combination of ingredients, most notably nattokinase, which I'm taking. I take nattokinase and dandelion root extract. I'm not taking that. I should get some of that.
Yeah, the dandelion root extract. Yeah, that's what will save you.
These ingredients, by the way, oh, anyway, dandelion root extract is, I
What
know a
is it?
guy who beat cancer with that. I'm not saying.
Sure you do, Jimmy. Sure you do. Fucking asshole. Yeah, dandelion extract. I know someone. You know what? I also know somebody who did yoga and beat bronchitis. It's crazy. Absolute mental. Absolutely mental.
That's I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying
You're
I know.
saying it's like dying with COVID as opposed to of COVID.
Yes.
He beat cancer with.
Yes, he beat cancer with it. These ingredients, when taken as directed, have been shown to help dissolve the existing spike proteins and block future ones from binding to your cells while strengthening your immune system. If you're worried about circulating spike proteins, go to twc.health/Jimmy and grab a bottle of Spike Support and use code Jimmy to save 15% on your first order. That's twc.health/Jimmy and use the code Jimmy to save 15%.
God. I have no words. I feel like the end of that video really really validated everything I'd been saying. So yeah. Oh god. I have no words. That was just a chef's kiss of an ending right there. I actually know people who would buy that. Please no.